Hi everybody, this is Diane. Look at this pile of goodness on my table. I have 4 domestic arts journals already. They will be going in my shop. As soon as I get this video done, I am going to photograph them and list them in the shop. At least 2 of them, because these 2 are spoken for. Now I want to talk about that just a little bit before we get into showing the journals that are going to be in my shop. I think I showed the wrong ones that were spoken for. These are the 2. I knew this one was, but I think I thought this one was going to be in the shop, but this is the one that the other person wanted. So, but that is also contingent on whether they want to accept the price. We did not talk about price at all. And as I made these journals, I realized that I was going to have to charge more than I normally do because of how much time and how many vintage things are going into the books anyway. So we haven't discussed price, but once I contact them and tell them the price, and if they accept that price, then they can have those. If they decline, which I totally understand and I won't be upset about, if they decline, then I will come back and let you know that these are available in the shop. And I do want to show them because there are so many different elements in each of these books. I would like to go through them all. I don't know if I can do it all in one video. But we'll start out by going through the 2 that I know are going to be listed in the shop. I took apron ties, vintage apron ties, or edges of pillowcases or sheets, vintage, and made ties out of them. So this is a lavender apron tie. This is the wide one. I just ironed it, so it looks nice and pretty. And there is a little bit of lavender, I think, on this cover. I don't see any right now, but I thought the lavender looked okay with it, so that's what I used. This is a large journal. Every one of these journals was a different size, which made it challenging in cutting the papers, as you can imagine. It's not quite 8.5 inches wide, and it is just a tad over 11 inches high. So it's pretty big. They all have a 2.5 inch signature. And for the spine covering on all of them, I used a piece of old, some sort of needlework fabric. So this has a texture to it, and some needlework has been started on it, but not finished. I left the blue threads hanging, and you can cut them off if you don't like them. These journals are meant to be messy, so things may not be cut evenly. There are lots of threads hanging. The stitching is messy. It's just a fun, messy, full journal. So let's look inside it. This one is called Scrap Quilts. I put scrapbook paper on the end paper. So this has a cardstock folder at the beginning, and there's a piece of, I guess it's kind of like a candle wicking, but I'm not sure if it is candle wicking. It's white embroidery anyway. And this is a bunch of French knots. So I just took a piece of that. I think every journal got a piece of this. There were 4 corners on this linen that had this, so I think every journal got a piece of it. So I sewed that on with messy black stitching and then put this coupon shopping list in there, and it is an envelope. So you can put something fun in that envelope, and you can write on it, of course. And there's just a little gift tag, a little vintage gift tag up here. On this page, I sewed a guest check on it so that you can write on that. But I love this quilted image of the 2 ladies having a cup of tea together. And here, so on these pages, a lot of them you won't be able to write on, but you can put some gesso on them and then write over that, or you could just glue something on it, glue your photos and whatnot, paint over it, glue a piece of paper on that you can write on. So I left blank canvases for you to do what you want. There's just a piece of fabric sewn on here for embellishment. This is a genuine vintage ivory soap label. One of my friends sent these to me a long time ago, and I'm finally using them. I think they're so much fun. So it's Procter & Gamble, and it's a very nice kind of thin paper that the soap used to be wrapped in. I just sewed it on as a decoration. This is from a knitting book, and I sewed a ruffle of gorgeous bright colored fabric on it. Another guest check. Up here is just a little piece of blue fabric and a little piece of crochet trim. It's just a scrapbook paper. And I took a piece of acetate and sewed it on here. You can tuck something in the pocket. This is, I've got to erase this. It had the marking in pencil of the price and the vendor's code from where I got it at the flea market. It is a yarn sample card. I had to cut it because it was way too big to fit in any of the journals, even the big ones. So I cut it, and you get a portion of it. I think it's really fun. And right here is a vintage tally card. I just sewed it right here, so you can open it up and write in it. You can flip it over, write. You can do all kinds of fun things. This is from one of the books, probably from this book. And it is sewn on this page as a pocket. And inside is something from one of the craft books, and I just sewed a tag on it. So you can write on the back and tuck it back in. And on this side is the front of a vintage pattern from the 70s. There's some feed sack fabric right here, and it is a pocket at the top. And I just put this card in. There's another price. So I paid quite a bit for this card, and I looked at it several times. It was always still there. And it did have the elastic piece still on it when I bought it. But I just loved the image, so I went ahead. I bought 2 of them, actually. So you get it. I love it. This is a piece of vintage fabric with a scrapbook paper, a vintage ticket for Bridgeport Speedway, a little bit of lace, and it is sewn onto some brown Aida cloth for cross stitching. But it is sewn on as a pocket. So in here is a patchwork curtain that covered the laundry area of this home in the 70s with those bright colors. Piece of feed sack fabric as a tab. And there's a vintage ticket there. This one is for Crystal Beach Park. This is a gorgeous piece of wallpaper, and there's a little playing card sewn on there. And a calendar with some quilting and patchwork on it. And on the back of that is a guest check sewn on and a receipt, a vintage receipt. Scrapbook paper here, and it has a flap. There is a round playing card, and this is the center of the signature. So, and there's another flap over here with feed sack fabric and one of the lexicon cards. And I did a little bit of fancy stitching there. This is a page that was added onto the purple scrapbook page to make the book longer, or the page longer. Here is a fun craft card that has the holes in it where it had been in a binder, and I attached this vintage flashcard on it, and then on the other side it is sewn to the calendar page, and so it becomes a pocket. And there's another vintage flashcard in there. And here is the other side of the folder that I made. There is a little pocket right here. This is the wallpaper, and I didn't put anything in there. I figured if I go through these books and I find a pocket that's empty, I'm leaving it empty. I've spent so much time, and there are so many pockets, so I'm leaving this for you to put something in. Here I had to sew something on because this corner looks fine, but on this side it had been peeled away a little bit so that you could see the white inner part of the cardstock. So I just sewed that card on the corner, and it's a tuck spot. I think when I did that, I forgot that there was a pocket here, but that's fine. You can still put something in there. It won't hinder it. Here's the other side of the Aida cloth. It has a page from the value stamp. These are, I put it on upside down, family stamps. They're kind of like the S&H green stamps, but they're yellow. They're for a different company. And a little piece of lace. So I sewed this page on as a pocket. It's quite sturdy because there are stamps on both sides. And then in this pocket, I tucked in this little needle book with lots of needles in it. It was originally priced, well, it says 98 cents up here, but down here it's stamped 19 cents. So maybe that's for a thrift store. I don't know. And here's just a couple of pieces of the Dresden plate quilt pieces that I have a stack of. I just put a couple there. This is a shopping list that I sewed to the top of the page with a piece of bead sack fabric. There's a little tiny card sewn here with some houses on it. Since these are domestic arts books, I thought that little house card was appropriate. This is from the knitting book, and this is a vintage bridge tally card or score sheet, I believe. It says rubbers, points, and players, and it was long, and rather than cut it off, I wrapped it around so you have it here, and then you can write on it here. This is gray parchment paper, and it's got a gorgeous piece of fabric on it. I think that's bead sack fabric. I love the colors of that. And another little tally card. This is the craft book page, and it's got another craft book page sewn to the front of it as a pocket. There's a piece of pattern tissue on it and a little piece of lace for decoration. And these are one of the giant cards that I have in my shop. I think they're called large photo cards, picture cards, large picture cards. I have a few sets left. I can't guarantee that there would be domestic pictures in any of the packets or all of the packets, but anyway, that's what I use, and I use quite a few of them in these journals. They were really fun to get to use them. I just sewed a tab on it. And here is another little flash card, and I put the basket one on there, and it's a nice color with this cardstock, and I just tucked in a few little tags. There's that one. This one is coffee dyed. And then this, I don't even know where it came from, but I thought that was pretty neat, so I just stuck it in there. I've had that for a long time. So the next signature, this is the, wow, only the second signature. All of that was one signature. So here we have the second signature, and there is a 1970s pattern again. It's still attached to the back, but I sewed it all on as a pocket. There's a little fabric selvage there. Inside the pocket is a page from a little vintage embroidery stitch book. And this is from the Reader's Digest craft book. I put that in there so that you could cut these out and use them. I used my paper punches and punched out different shapes with these things, and you'll see them as different embellishments. So you can do all kinds of fun things with those images. And of course you can tuck whatever you want to in the pockets. This is something that I had fussy cut from one of the books, and I glued it to cardstock and then cut it out again. And I glued it on as a little pocket. And this is a card it's a craft card, and it was in German. It was from my friend Pirio. She sent them to me a long time ago, and I kind of hoarded them, but now it's time to use them, so there you go. Pirio messaged me and said it was good to see them being used. This is engineers or architects vellum. It's got a grid on it, which you probably can't see on camera, but it's a very faint blue grid. There's a piece of fabric sewn to the edge and a tiny playing card. This is one of those knitting pages that was in a binder. It's got a little merchandise tag and a telephone note paper there that you can write on. Here's one of the flowers that I punched out of the images from the Reader's Digest. They show various stitches in knitting and crochet and things like that in those swatches. So I punched some shapes out. This is a bias tape, brown bias tape, and a vintage ticket. I had to, if you didn't watch previous videos, I had to hinge my pages together so that they would be wide enough for this book. So there's lots of that going on. And that's why there are so many threads. It's from all this sewing that I did to hinge. And you can see I did some fancy stitching on some of them. This is a fabric swatch book. These things were from a fabric swatch book, and I believe they were for a sheer curtain. It's a sheer fabric anyway. This one has a light pattern on it. So I would take 2 of those samples and put them together so that they would fit the book, and then sew them together, and that formed pockets. So this is from one of my craft books. I cut it out and I put it on cardstock. And there's a little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hexagon. I think I said octagon in a previous video and someone pointed that out. I know the difference between a hexagon and an octagon. I just hadn't counted the sides. So this is a vintage hexagon that had been cut out probably for a quilting project. This is a wallpaper border. Isn't it beautiful? And this is a little crocheted flower that I fussy cut out from one of the craft books. And there's a couple of vintage daisy trim pieces. Now I have a calendar page in each of the signatures. I forgot what the calendar was the applique or quilted one there. This one is a 1964 calendar. You may be surprised when you see the images because these were taken of high school senior girls, and well, they're cute, but some of them have very short outfits on. But I thought it was really fun. It was just a long calendar page, so I took some, and I think each journal has one of the pages. This is a children's book and scrapbook paper and a playing card, and I put Queen of Hearts on this one because obviously it's the Queen of Hearts. Guest check there. Another shape punched out. Piece of fabric. Now this one is pretty sedate. This is Miss Sharon Ransom, junior. Oh, she was a junior. Cheerleader, drama club. Hobbies are writing and skating. She's lovely. And here's the other side of that sheer sample, and there is a page from the Reader's Digest craft book in here. There's tatting, bobbin lace being done here. Those are the bobbins for it. And this is a cross stitch. But I folded it so that the fish would show through the sheer. This just has a piece of lace sewn on it. A playing card up there with the Williamsburg Governor's Mansion on it. A flash card and one of the president's wives. I believe it's Coolidge. Yep. Somebody sent that to me, I think, a long time ago. There's another note paper there. So this is that craft page. Where's the front of it? This one. And some of them were folded double like a folio, but this one actually has a fold out, so you get extra space with that one. There's a piece of pretty fabric at the top of that, and I used some fancy stitching there. On the third signature we have another folder with some more embroidery as a pocket, and I cut up that vegetable slicer box. It was a vintage box, and I used some of the pieces. You can journal on the back, and I had made this for a previous project that didn't get used. It's just a tall journaling tag from a craft book. This is about upholstering furniture. I stitched it to a piece of coffee dyed paper and folded the top down and sewed a button and cheesecloth at the top. Makes the top more sturdy. Some fabric sewn here. There's a page of a children's book, and it's sewn on as a pocket. And I just tucked in this package of nylon adjustable shoulder straps for bras and slips. Do with it what you want. This is a American Legion raffle ticket for a 1954 automobile. First prize was a Cadillac, second was a Buick, third prize was a Plymouth. And then there's some other prizes listed there. I got a whole booklet of those raffle tickets at a flea market. The knitting book with a fabric tab and a bridge score pad. Scrapbook paper with a page from a real K & Company smash book, and it had lace on it, so I put that on. And this is one of my Homemaker's cards from that little box that I found. Just some bright ideas that you can use. Like, we would call them life hacks now. Homemaking hacks. This is from a photo album. So I just sewed it on. You can flip it and do stuff behind it. And I put some yarn that came with a needlepoint kit that I got at a flea market. I just tied that around there. And this is from one of the craft books. And I just cut that image out and glued it to a card. Here we have another book page sewn to a book page to form a large pocket. And I sewed a piece of sewing fabric to it, or pattern, and a couple fabrics there. And this is one of the large cards with a cleanser card on it, or cleanser can. Kitchen cleanser. A couple of fabrics on it as a tab. Oh, there's something else in there. This is one of the binder pages, and I put some reinforcements on it and added some yarn. Now we had, remember I got some, in a box full of stuff, I had these pockets to replace pockets that had holes in them in men's work pants or trousers. I had a few different varieties of those pockets in that box of stuff. So this one, I put two together. I think they're iron-on, because if you pressed an iron to this, it would probably seal it shut. I sewed on this piece of cross stitch, even though there's a stain on it. I just like that it makes it look more old, and I just love the colors of that. Just a little bit of trim there that I sewed on. This is just something you can journal on. And I took this package from Glitter Trims, vintage package, and just sewed some papers on so you can write on those. And it says, "Home is where you hang your heart." And on the back there's a piece of feed sack fabric and some of the yarns from another kit. This is a vintage seam binding package and another page from the needle, or the embroidery stitch book, and wallpaper. Another calendar page and some gingham sewn along the edge. Children's book with a craft page and a vintage ticket. And there's a pocket here with a vintage flashcard. This is a scrap left over from this piece that I used for the binding, and I made a pocket out of it. And I sewed this piece on from an old linen wall calendar. There's just a tag I made out of coffee dyed paper and another page from the stamp book. You can actually write over that. It's light enough that you could journal on it. And here's another tally card. I sewed it on this way, so it would be a tuck spot, and tuck this little digital tag in there. Here's the other side of the pocket, and I sewed this on from a piece of embroidery. I love the colors. And on the back is a piece of fabric and this card of old threads. This came in a little sewing kit that you would carry in your purse for repair jobs. There's another of the domestic hints, the hack cards. And I made a little booklet out of this that came out of a craft book. I had folded it in triplicate, and then I added just some scraps of notebook paper that you can write on. I sewed a little printable label on there. I had so much fun, but oh, I had 2 rooms that were a complete disaster because of all the stuff I had out. The variety of stuff that I used. A sewing pattern. This one is just sewn on, so it's not a pocket. There's some fabric and a little cardstock tag. A guest check with bias tape on it. And this knitting book page has a few things sewn on just for fun. This is another flower punch from the craft book page. There's another Dresden plate piece and a piece of lace on the edge of the page. The other side of the children's book, and inside is this fun image that you can use as a tag. Glue something to the back and write on it. And a chart for knitting or something. And another flashcard that says Market, a little bit of vintage lace there. And on the back is another piece of the linen that I used for the spine. And I did wrap this piece all the way around. It was just long enough to fit. So I made a pocket out of that for the back. And then I have these labels that I had purchased many years ago, especially handmade by Diane. And these were to go in the clothing that I made for my daughter or something like that, whatever. I don't think I ever used them in a piece of clothing, and I've had them for years. So they're going in domestic arts journals now. And up here I have a stamp that says Creative Home Arts Club Life Member, so I stamped that up there. And then it has my name here, but I put this in here because I include it or something like it in every journal, and it has my full name and the year. So this one is Scrap Quilts, and I'll try to go through the other ones more quickly because I don't think I need to explain everything quite so much in all of the journals. This one is called Machine Stitchery, and it is tied with fabric that came off the edge of a pillowcase. So I was cutting pillowcases up, and this was where the seam was. So I would just cut and then tear this piece off. And I saved the pieces for something just like this. So I sewed 2 of them together, and it is the tie. You do not have to keep these pieces. If you think they're too sloppy or messy or whatever, you don't like them, you don't have to keep them. If you don't want to tie them around the book, you could tie them around, like put it in between signatures. Whoops, you can't see that. Put it in between the signatures and then tie it and just use it as a decoration. Whatever you want to do with it, or throw it away. It is something everybody else would throw away. Okay, so I added a piece of patchwork here. It was just 3 pieces pieced together, and some yo-yos. Those are not vintage. And then this is vintage, the fabric, needlework fabric that has a little bit of stitching on it. And on the back I added this gimp trim that I love. And there was enough of that fabric to make a pocket, and it has that little tag on it. Here's another folder with Little Miss Muffet embroidered on this pocket, and this is a vintage card from a Vogue pattern file, the kind you'd see in the fabric stores. This is wallpaper. This is from a vintage sewing pattern catalog. Just an index card. This is a piece of fabric, a red gingham fabric, and it had a doll pattern piece, doll clothes pattern piece pinned to it. So I just took the pins out and sewed the pattern to the fabric, and it is that big. I wrapped it around and sewed it to the page so that, did I sew it? Yeah, I sewed it here and here. So it's open, and you can I tucked this little card in there. I didn't tuck anything on the back side, but you could. There's room here. There's a piece of fabric and another punched out flower from the paper. The acetate page, it's got a piece of lace sewn on it. And this is from a vintage appointment book or journal or something. And it's got somebody's handwriting on it, so I just put a page in there. And this came from a photo album that I cut apart. You can write on that. Pattern page, envelope of course, for Barbie doll clothes. Some Aida cloth with fabric again, and a flash card inside there, and a postcard with a lady going shopping. Bridge score pad there on wallpaper. This is the center. Opens up and there's a card sewn on each flap. This says, curtains, slip covers, this must be heaven. She's at her sewing machine. So I'll just try to flip through without talking too much now so we can get through these. This is a vintage rickrack packaging sewn to a vintage blue file card. I Mod Podged some napkin to that time card. This is a hexagon cut, well, yeah, hexagon shape. It's Grandmother's Flower Garden is the name of that pattern, I believe. And it was cut out of one of the magazines, and I just ruffled up some fabric and sewed it there. I made a little booklet out of this, a little notepad. Got quite a few sheets in there. Second signature, we've got another piece of that linen tablecloth with another fussy cut image from one of the books. I did include some pages from that old Heloise Household Hints paperback book that I got at the flea market. I would just tuck a full page in several of the pockets, so that'll give you some good reading. And of course there's a bingo card. Several items tucked in there. There's wallpaper that was made into an envelope, and I tucked a repair tag in there. Love this calendar page. This is from a book on how to draw people. This is a vintage receipt. I just separated it where it was perforated and sewed it to both flaps. Piece of chenille on that. This one has two game score sheets on it. There's a hexagon with a paper heart that I punched out. There's that white embroidered piece with the coupon shopping list and a long flash card. This one has a Kate Greenaway page. There's a canning jar you can write on, and another journaling card here. There's some of the green stamps. I wrapped them around the page and sewed them on. This was something that it came to me in a box of stuff, or somebody sent it to me. I think somebody must have sent it to me. But it was already cut off of whatever garment it was on, but it still had this giant button. So I sewed it here and then zigzagged around the raw edges and sewed it on as a pocket. It's got all the layers that it came with. And I just thought that was so fun. And I just added a few pages for you. And a journaling card. This one is just sewn on. It's not a pocket. Here's a piece of embroidery that was started. It's beautiful. It's just got the blue flowers done. There's a little bit of green yarn attached. And I just left it. You can cut it off or pull it out. I think all you have to do is pull it out. if you don't want it, but I left it. Wallpaper. This is attached to cardstock and one of the Heloise pages. There's a children's book page attached to one of the craft book pages. Here's one of the girls from the high school. See what I mean about the short skirts? I thought it was weird to do calendars with high school girls. This is just the envelope. Do what you want with that. Put some treasures in there. It's vintage Aunt Martha's iron-on transfers. And again, you can cut these up and do stuff with them. The other side of that unfinished embroidery. This one has the canning jar in the photo sleeve, and I didn't sew it on as a flap. I sewed all the way around it. Okay, so we have machine stitchery and we have scrap quilts that will be in my shop. So I'm going to try to quickly go through the other two so that the ladies who wanted them can get a peek at them. This one is Patchwork and Quilting, Better Homes and Gardens, and I love the bright colors. I used two different there's an apron tie, the blue, and the orange is from one of the pillowcase seams. So I thought that it just really helps with the jumble of bright colors here. I like it. And I put yo-yos on this one. It's just got a yellow fabric that somebody started doing some needlework on, and some GIMP trim. There's a piece of embroidery that was started and not finished. There's a Creative Home Arts Club Life Member stamp. That flower got bent. Some green stamps and a lexicon card. This is from a ribbon roll, gift tie ribbon. This one has yellow Aida cloth and one of the German craft cards. Wallpaper. Love this pattern. Inside here is the long flash card and a page from a housekeeping book. Like it had all kinds of tips for how to clean your home and stuff like that. It's a vintage book. I'll put that in later. There's another page from that book with the writing on it and another tag. Inside the acetate page, your pocket. There's space for writing on the back of that. And that. I used lots of my vintage pattern covers. I wanted to say that I just took all the innards out of all these patterns. So now I've got a stack of pattern tissue and the instructions. So I'm going to send a set of the instructions and pattern tissue with each of these books, and you can have fun playing around with that stuff. This is an envelope. Got one of those housekeeping cards in it. Goes that way, goes upside down. Here's another sample, a fabric sample card, and I put that on as a pocket. And this is a page from another household hint book. There's a piece of chenille on the top of that. For this, I just used a little scrap of the edge of a linen that I had cut up. And I do have this needle book in my collection, so I had just copied it on my printer, and I made it into a little booklet. I couldn't remember if it was a digital that I purchased or if I owned it, and I do own it. I found it. This is some household hints in there. This is a wallpaper envelope, and this is one of the flocked alphabet cards that I had purchased at an antique mall, and a vintage gift card. Calendar page, children's book page. This is a round card in one of the circles I cut out of the quilt book. Little tiny playing card there. This is from a children's book from the 1930s. We're talking about pints and quarts. There's a piece of lace sewn here. This had some doll clothes printed on the fabric, so this is part of the instruction. It says cut here, and then just some little scraps of fabric. There's the other little Miss Muffet. This is from an iron-on transfer. And a flash card. Another German craft card. This was cut from one of the craft books. A couple of guest checks there. Some fabric sewn at the bottom of the page. No pocket here, just a decorative page. This was some kind of a needlework project. I just sewed it in, folded it over and sewed it in as a pocket, and there's the other side you'll see. There's that house playing card on wallpaper. There's one of the 1964 ladies. She's from January, so she's ringing in the new year. This is a little vintage needle package, and I just thought it was so cool looking. So I sewed it on as a tuck spot and put this little tiny card in there. You can tuck something else in there, whatever you'd like. The vellum pocket with a time card that I purchased from my friend Nancy at Wishes and Weeds. Embroidery stitch page and a little packet of snaps. Here's the other side of that fabric piece, and this is just a flap. You can glue it down if you want it to be a pocket. This one has two of the photo pockets in it. So I cut this image out of one of the books and glued it to a card, added a tab, and this one just has a flash card in it. It's got the yarn tied in the holes, and it is sewn to this scrapbook fabric behind, scrapbook paper. Love this little image on the card. and a needle book. And there's my fabric label up there. That's Patchwork and Quilting. And lastly, we have the Complete Guide to Needlework. This has 2 pieces of sheets. This is a piece of a sheet, and this is got some, it's an edge piece, and it's got a little tag. You can cut that off, throw the whole thing away, whatever you want to do. There's a wide gimp trim or upholstery trim there. This one has the, oh, I forgot the name of this cloth, but it's got some needlework, very fine needlework on it. There's the back, which is really pretty. So this one is wide. I haven't been talking about the dimensions. I did mention the dimensions of the first one. This one will also be in my shop, so I will give you the dimensions. 8 1/4 by 11 1/4. This one is 9 1/2 by 8 3/4. So again, the embroidery pocket there. I'm just going to flip through quickly. This one is already spoken for, if she agrees to the price. There's something inside the pockets. I just love all these old patterns, and I'm glad I got to use them. So this is one of the trouser pockets, and someone who saw my first video, or one of the first videos that as I was collecting things to put in, suggested using one of my old vintage iron-on transfers. So I did, and it's a bit faded, but you can see it's a pansy and some little daisies. You would do lazy daisy stitch around that. So I think it's okay. And inside is a booklet that I had made a while ago out of various craft book pages. It's even got a little fabric flip inside it. So you can have fun gluing stuff in there. This is just cut from one of the books, and a kitty cat playing card. This card says chimney. Here's the other side of the pocket. It says mine, because I figure you're going to put something in there that you want to keep. And there's the tag that came right on it. This one has the bathroom sink. This is just a cut-off piece of one of those gorgeous calendar pages I didn't want to throw away. Of course, it's on a photo sleeve. Strip of fabric there. Here's one of the pieces I cut off one of the yarn cards. I made a tuck spot out of this from one of the craft books. I glued it to cardstock. There's something inside that pocket. This is a collar, an embroidered collar that I sewed on as a little tuck spot. And I put in a old maid card of Handy Sandy as she's baking a cake or something. So this book is so wide that I didn't make pockets with this. I could have made the page shorter and made pockets, but I didn't think of it. This was the first book that I actually cut the pages for. And this is one of the clear letters that I bought. It came with the flocked ones. Oh, here's the 1964 calendar. This one has a piece of wallpaper sewn to the book page, and there's a piece of the wide yarn that I just stitched to the edge of the page. I think this is the one that surprised me. She's got her cap and gown, but the gown is really short. That flashcard has a rug, says the word rug. Fabric cluster there. This has another part of that vegetable slicer box. I want you to notice that there is a lot of space in between the signatures, which means that you have lots of room to put stuff in to this journal. Here's another of the ivory soap labels. Just a tag. This one has a tag back here, which has a large kind of a flashcard, I guess, in there, and also in the top. Brown Aida cloth in this one. Some things tucked in there. There's a flashcard that says fence on this piece of wallpaper. One of the gorgeous calendar pages. There's a needle card here, needle book I should say, and flashcard. So you see all the stuff that goes into these books. You'll see why it took so long for me to get them put together. This is the package